The Magic School Bus Chapter Book. Twister Trouble. Written by Anne Schreiber. Illustrations by John Spears. Introduction. Hi. I'm Tim. I am one of the kids in Ms. Frizzle's class. Perhaps you've heard of Ms. Frizzle. Sometimes we just call her the Frizz. She is a terrific teacher, but a little strange. The Frizz takes us on a lot of unusual field trips in the magic school business. They don't call it magic for nothing. We never know what's going to happen. Ms. Frizzle likes to surprise us, but we can usually tell when she is planning a special lesson. We just look at what she's wearing. One day Ms. Frizzle came to school wearing a dress with all kinds of weather symbols on it: clouds, snow, raindrops, and the sun. It sure looked like the makings of a field trip. Let me tell you all about it. Chapter 1. We were in the middle of our first and favorite class of the day, science. I was putting the finishing touches on my tornado poster. Tim, I need your help. I'm trying to draw a diagram to go with my tornado in a bottle experiment. It was Wanda. She was asking me for help because she knows I like to draw. In a few minutes, Wanda, I said. I already told Phoebe I'd draw a rooster for her weather vane. And I still have to finish my poster. Okay, Wanda said. I'd really appreciate your help, she added a few seconds later. I want to have the best exhibit at the Wild Weather Show. We were all getting ready for the big Wild Weather Show that our class was organizing. Ms. Frizzle had all of us working hard. And not much time was left. The show went on that night. I went back to filling in the colors on my tornado poster. Actually, I wanted to have the best exhibit in the Wild Weather Show. The Wildest Weather of All, by Tim. Tornadoes have the most powerful winds on Earth. A tornado can toss a train up into the air. It can snap a tree in two like a matchstick. A tornado is a twisting column of air that touches down on the ground. Its funnel looks like an elephant's trunk hanging out of a cloud. The funnel sucks up everything in its path like a giant vacuum cleaner. Here is what a big tornado looks like. I had just finished my poster when I heard a loud crash. I turned around and saw Carlos tripping over a chair. He was carrying a big box with hail written on it. The box flew up into the air. And ping-pong balls, hail, flew out and fell down on everyone. It's a ping-pong storm, Phoebe called out. A ping-pong ball bounced into Keisha's anemometer. One of the cups knocked over Ralphie's hygrometer. Reading the Weather, by Ralphie. An anemometer measures the force or speed of the wind. A hygrometer measures the humidity. Humidity is the amount of moisture in the air. Carlos, Ralphie complained. I was almost finished. Dorothy and was just about to lend me a strand of her hair. I need just one human hair to make my hygrometer work. Forget it, Ralphie, Dorothy Ann answered. My hair stays on my head where it belongs. But Dorothy Ann, Ralphie said. You have the longest hair in the class. Besides, it's in the name of science. All great scientists sacrifice a little piece of themselves for the greater good of humankind. I think tears actually came to Dorothy Ann's eyes. She reached up and plucked one hair from her head. One small hair from a human, a giant leap ahead for humankind, she said. Just then, Miss Frizzle walked in. Liz, her pet lizard, was perched on her shoulder. The Frizz's dress was covered with all kinds of weather symbols: snowflakes, raindrops, clouds, and the sun. That dress could mean only one thing. We were about to hit the road in the magic school business. Good morning, class, she said. Today, I have a special treat for you. We all held our breath. At that moment, someone else walked into the room. Class, Miss Frizzle said, meet my second cousin Dr. Wendy Weatherby. We all said hello to Dr. Wendy. Then we checked her out. She was wearing an awful lot of gear for just a second cousin. In fact, she looked a lot like a scientist to me. Pinned to her shirt was a huge badge with the initials SC. I wondered what SC stood for. Attached to her belt was all kinds of equipment. I could see a cell phone, a two-way radio, and something else that looked like Ralphie's hygrometer and Phoebe's weather vane rolled into one. Dr. Wendy was carrying a laptop computer. There was something sitting on her shoulder. This is my pet lizard, Zill, she said. Zill locked eyes with Liz, who was still sitting on the Frizz's shoulder. Neither lizard blinked. Bad lizard vibes filled the room. Are you a teacher, like Miss Frizzle? Wanda asked. No, I'm a meteorologist, Dr. Wendy answered. Do you know what that is? I know, Carlos said. You probably study meteors and comets. According to my dictionary, a meteorologist studies weather, Dorothy said. You're a weather scientist, right? Right, Dr. Wendy said with a smile. Do you study wild weather? Ralphie asked. I study all kinds of weather, Dr. Wendy said. Me too, added Da. What makes the weather? By Dorothy Ann. To make weather, mix together 3 ingredients: air, water, and heat. Air contains water in the form of gas, called water vapor. When the sun heats the earth, the warm air rises. As the air rises, it cools, and the water vapor turns into water droplets. Lots of droplets make clouds. And where there are clouds, there can be rain or snow. When molecules of water vapor join together and turn into liquid water, scientists call it condensation. Well, don't just sit there, Miss Frizzle told us. We're going on a field trip. And Dr. Wendy is joining us. A field trip. Let's go! Most of the class cheered. I noticed that Wanda, Arnold, and I were the only kids who didn't look happy. Wanda's hand shot up. But Miss Frizzle, we have to be ready for the wild weather show. Our families will be coming to see it tonight. Yeah, Miss Frizzle, I added, we need to stay here and keep working. I wasn't going to let Wanda look any more dedicated to the wild weather show than I was. But Miss Frizzle had that twinkle in her eye. You may be surprised, Tim. This field trip might make our wild weather show look tame. Arnold started to squirm. Miss Frizzle, can I stay here and see if my windsock moves? He asked. I thought I saw Miss Frizzle wink at Dr. Wendy. To the bus, Arnold. You wouldn't want to miss this for all the wind in the world. Wind and Wild Weather by Arnold. Wind is what can make weather really wild. Wind is just moving air. You can't see it. But you can feel it pushing against you. Wind is formed whenever heavy air pushes on lighter air. Winds can range from a gentle breeze to a violent tornado. Chapter 2. I wonder where we are going, Arnold said nervously as we all piled onto the magic school business. Me too, said Phoebe. We never took wild field trips in my old school. You never had a teacher like the Frizz, I said. Just then, Miss Frizzle climbed on board. We all scrambled for our favorite seats. I sat right in front so I wouldn't miss a thing. Really, Miss Frizzle, Dorothy said. Where are we going? As Miss Frizzle opened her mouth to speak, the whole bus went quiet. We were sitting on the edge of our seats. How does an amusement park sound? Miss Frizzle said with a smile on her face. An amusement park, Ralphie said. That means rides. And cotton candy, Wanda added. And weather. Ms. Frizzle said. We're going to a new amusement park called Weatherama. All the rides are named after wild weather. Does it have science exhibits? Dorothy and asked. We all groaned. Just then, Dr. Wendy stepped onto the bus with Zill. Zill jumped right out of her arms onto the dashboard. Liz looked at Zill and made a face. Zill stuck out his tongue, and a chameleon's tongue is very long. Leaping lizards, said Ms. Frizzle. I think you'd better drive, Wendy. Ms. Frizzle grabbed Liz and sat down across from me. Dr. Wendy took over the wheel. Fasten your seat belts, kids. We're taking off for Weatherama. I got worried when I heard Dr. Wendy say taking off. Sure enough, she pressed a button on the dashboard and, in a flash, it was covered with lights and dials. Prepare for takeoff, Dr. Wendy announced. Oh, no. Arnold said. I feel a Frizzle field trip coming on. We checked our seat belts. A loud roar came from both sides of the bus. I looked out the window. The bus had wings. And it was lifting off the ground. Miss Frizzle, Carlos said nervously. What's going on? We're going to where the real weather is, the Frizz said. Right up into the sky. I looked back at Arnold. He had his eyes squeezed shut. Just then, our seat backs began to glow. They turned into radar screens. At the top of the screens, printouts appeared in different colors. The Dish on Radar by Carlos. Weather scientists use radar to track storms as they move. The storms show up on a radar screen as blobs of color. Doppler radar can measure the speed of the wind. It can also spot clouds that cause thunderstorms and tornadoes building in the air. Scientists look for a blob of color on a radar screen that has a hook pattern, like an S or a 6. That indicates a rotating thunderstorm. These thunderstorms often produce tornadoes. Thanks to Doppler radar, the National Weather Service can issue tornado warnings up to 20 minutes before a tornado hits. It's a weather map, Dorothy said in an excited voice, just like on television. Dr. Wendy turned around with a smile on her face. You're on a weather plane, kids, she said. Keep your eyes on your screens. They'll show the weather on radar. And you can check for precipitation, that's what meteorologists call rain and snow. You can also read the temperature. That's cool, Keisha said. Well, not that cool, Dorothy said. According to my screen, the temperature is still 70 degrees. Carlos pointed to the screen in front of him. Look, the temperature is dropping. That's because we're going higher in the sky, Dorothy said. The farther up we go, the colder the air gets. A note from Dorothy: warm air rises because it is lighter than cold air. But as warm air gets nigher and higher, it becomes colder and colder. The weather plane climbed higher in the sky. All of a sudden, the sky outside the window wasn't blue anymore. It was gray and cloudy. Where did the sky go? Keisha said. The sky is still there, Dr. Wendy explained. We just flew into some clouds. Hold on. I think we might have a wild ride coming up. A Change is in the Air by Phoebe. Air pressure is the weight of the air above you. It is measured by barometers. High air pressure usually means clear weather. But when barometers show that the air pressure is falling, a storm may be on the maze. We got reports from the weather stations on the ground. They said that the air pressure was low in the direction we were heading. We all stared at our weather screens. The radar showed lots of green and yellow blobs. Just then, loud drops of rain splattered against the windows. The plane started to shake. It bounced around in the sky. Then it dropped downward with a sudden jolt. "Oh, no!" Arnold shouted. "I lost my stomach." "You'd better find it before lunch," Keisha said. The rain was hitting harder against the windows. Suddenly, the compartments over our heads opened up. Rain slickers dropped down into our laps. "Class, please put on your raincoats," Ms. Frizzle said. "And don't forget your hoods. Stormy weather is on the way." "You mean it's going to get worse?" Arnold asked. His face looked green. The plane bounced up and down in the storm. Big drops of rain continued to splatter against the windows. Our radar screens were covered with yellow and orange blobs that showed heavy precipitation. Liz poked her head out of Ms. Frizzle's pocket. She took one look at Zill, hissed, and hid again. But Zill sat right on top of the plane's control panel. He looked out the window at the storm. He seemed to be loving every minute of it. Just when we were getting used to the stormy ride, our radar screens began to beep. They turned a bright yellow. Then big red letters appeared on the screens. "Thunderstorm watch." "What does that mean?" Phoebe asked nervously. "Are we in the middle of some wild weather?" "Not as wild as it's going to get," Dr. Wendy said. Then she smiled a weird little smile. From Dr. Wendy's laptop. Watches and warnings. A tornado watch means that weather conditions are right for tornadoes to form. So people should be careful. A tornado warning is much more serious. It means a tornado has actually been spotted in the area. Take cover. Fast. I was beginning to see the family resemblance between Ms. Frizzle and Dr. Wendy. It was a crazy, bumpy ride all the way to Weatherby. We kept our eyes glued to our radar screens. Suddenly, the temperature readings started to rise. It was because we were getting closer to the ground. "Prepare for landing," Dr. Wendy announced. "I don't want to go to Weatherby," Arnold moaned. "I still haven't found my stomach." But it was too late for that. We felt the plane going down, down, down.